9 Hollywood stars who have quietly retired. There is a unique sadness in a farewell never spoken. While some Hollywood legends take their final bow with press conferences and emotional goodbyes, others simply disappear. No announcement, no farewell tour. One day they are on magazine covers and theater marquees, and the next they are gone, vanished into private lives far from Hollywood's relentless spotlight. The industry has always had an unwritten rule that you never admit you're done, explained a veteran casting director who has watched countless careers rise and fall. Saying, "I'm retiring," is like announcing death in Hollywood. So instead, many stars simply stop returning calls until the town finally understands the message. These 9 remarkable talents did not fade away because of scandal or lack of opportunity. They walked away at the height of their powers. They were Oscar winners, box office champions, and cultural icons who decided that the rewards of stardom no longer outweighed its costs. What makes these departures so fascinating is the deliberate choice behind them. A longtime Hollywood agent observed that these weren't cases of the phone stopping ringing. These were stars who looked at endless opportunities, unlimited wealth, and global adoration and still said, "No thank you. I've had enough." Their silent exits leave behind lingering questions. What makes someone walk away from a dream millions chase? What happens when the applause stops by choice rather than circumstance? And perhaps most intriguing of all, are they truly at peace with their decision? Or do they sometimes watch the screen and wonder what might have been? Before exploring these vanished icons, we begin with the greatest actor of his generation, a man who chose to end his extraordinary career far from the cameras that made him famous. Number 1. Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis was the master actor who delivered his final performance without anyone realizing it at the time. When the credits rolled on Phantom Thread in 2017, few suspected they were watching the last work of a man widely considered one of the greatest actors in history. Day-Lewis didn't just act. He disappeared into roles with a level of commitment that stunned those who worked with him. "He doesn't play people, he becomes them," remembered one director from the 1990s. And in so doing, he created some of cinema's most unforgettable characters, from Christy Brown in My Left Foot to Daniel Plainview in There Will Be Blood and Abraham Lincoln in Lincoln. Often, he remained in character even when the cameras weren't rolling, adopting the voice, posture, and physicality of his roles for months on end. Year after year, the emotional and physical toll of his method became immense. For the boxer, he trained like a real fighter for nearly 3 years. For My Left Foot, he stayed in a wheelchair throughout production. After Lincoln, he confided to those close to him that he wasn't sure he could endure that level of immersion ever again. When he announced his retirement in 2017, the film world was shocked. 60 years old, his talent undiminished, he walked away from absolute mastery. He withdrew to rural Ireland, focusing on woodworking and painting, creative pursuits that don't ask him to psych himself into being someone else. Unlike other actors, retiring only to return later, Day-Lewis has shown no interest in comebacks or cameos or appearances. His departure was complete, and he ended his career with a performance as brilliant as any he ever gave. It was a perfectly timed goodbye delivered entirely on his own terms. Number 2. Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz was the superstar who found peace in obscurity. During her peak years, Diaz was one of Hollywood's most bankable talents, her films collectively earning more than $7 billion. Her blend of charm, comic instinct, and effortless beauty put her on a footing in action films, comedies, and dramas alike. Then, she quietly walked away. Once Annie wrapped up in 2014, Diaz quietly declined every offer that came her way, no matter how majorly lucrative. This wasn't a retreat caused by dwindling roles. She left when she could still command 8-figure salaries and headline any studio project she wanted. At first, many assumed she was merely taking a breather. But as years passed, it became evident she'd stepped away for good. Diaz later spoke of how she needed to reclaim her life from the nonstop scheduling and pressure that comes with fame. She married Benji Madden in 2015 and welcomed a daughter in 2019, steps that planted her outside the Hollywood bubble. And her retreat was complete. No producing, no directing, no major appearances. Friends say she discovered a life she liked better than the one she'd left behind. Once a fixture in popular culture, Diaz now lives silently, rarely photographed, embracing all of the simplicity this world has to offer. The amazing thing is, she doesn't seem to miss acting at all. Number 3. Bridget Fonda. Bridget Fonda was born into Hollywood royalty, yet opted for anonymity. As the daughter of Peter Fonda, niece of Jane Fonda, and granddaughter of Henry Fonda, she took her first breaths in one of the most iconic families in Hollywood. Her talent and striking presence on screen made her one of the great rising stars of the 1990s, with standout roles in Single White Female, Point of No Return, and Jackie Brown. But at the height of her momentum, she disappeared. Her last acting credit came in the 2002 television film Snow Queen, and then she just stopped working. No scandal or public struggle. No hint of dissatisfaction. She walked away from a successful career without any explanation. That departure coincided with some significant life changes. Her 2003 marriage to composer Danny Elfman, the 2005 birth of their son. With those milestones behind her, rather than keeping any kind of foothold in Hollywood, she disengaged altogether. For 2 decades, there were no photographs of her, absolutely no sightings, an almost unimaginable amount of privacy in today's celebrity world. When finally photos did surface 2 years ago, in 2022, they showed a woman who didn't seem in the least bit interested in the glamour once expected of her, but rather very comfortable in the completely normal life, way out of the pressures of fame. Friends are at pains to stress it wasn't trauma that drove her decision, but contentment. Fonda simply no longer needed or wished to be famous. Number 4. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson, the Hollywood legend, left the screen without ever saying goodbye. With his unmistakable grin, sharp wit, and ability to command a film with a single look, Nicholson defined generations of American cinema. Yet after 2010's How Do You Know, he quietly drifted away from acting. Unlike other stars, he never announced his retirement. For years, his name floated around possible comeback projects, but nothing ever materialized. Over time, his absence settled into an unspoken final chapter. Friends have suggested that Nicholson's retreat may have been influenced by concerns about memory and the demands of performance. Known for valuing his craft and reputation, he may have preferred disappearing to delivering work he felt fell below his standards. For a man who embodied Hollywood glamour and excess, courtside at Lakers games, surrounded by admirers, his quiet withdrawal marks a striking shift. Today he lives a largely private life in his longtime Mulholland Drive home, surrounded by art and visited by close friends. His rare public sightings create a stir precisely because they are so infrequent. Nicholson's quiet exit feels like the end of an era, the final bow of a kind of movie star who lived boldly, broke rules, and never apologized for any of it. Number 5. Rick Moranis. Rick Moranis was the comedy star who chose fatherhood over fame. In the 1980s and early 1990s, he was everywhere, the soft-spoken, bespectacled heart of beloved films like Ghostbusters, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, Spaceballs, and Little Shop of Horrors. His blend of anxious energy and gentle warmth made him one of the most recognizable comedy figures of his generation. Then, at the height of his fame, he disappeared from Hollywood entirely, making a decision so rare in the entertainment world that it became something of a legend. A producer who worked with him later remarked that most career pauses happen because the business slows down, but Rick walked away when studios were still lining up to hire him. He was at the peak of his earning power. His departure was triggered by a devastating loss. In 1991, his wife, costume designer Ann Belsky, died of breast cancer, leaving Moranis to raise their 2 young children alone. Faced with the impossible balance between life as a movie star and life as a single parent, he stepped away completely. Rather than hiring more help or attempting to juggle both worlds, he chose full immersion into fatherhood. What started as a hiatus quietly became permanent. He did not maintain a foot in the business by directing or producing, nor did he take occasional roles to stay visible. Instead, he disappeared from the public eye, rarely photographed, rarely interviewed, living a quiet, committed family life. In rare comments, Moranis has been clear that he has never regretted choosing his children over his career. After nearly 20 years away, he briefly resurfaced in a 2020 commercial with Ryan Reynolds, sparking speculation about a comeback. But his priorities remain unchanged. He may work again, but only if it fits the family-centered life he built. What sets Rick apart is the clarity of his values. In a world that worships fame, he recognized that success feels empty without the relationships that give life meaning. Number 6. Phoebe Cates. Phoebe Cates was the 1980s dream girl who vanished. To a generation of moviegoers, she is an unforgettable presence, whether stepping out of the pool in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, bringing charm and edge to Gremlins, or embodying the offbeat cool of Drop Dead Fred. Then, at the height of her beauty and popularity, she simply left acting with no announcement. The departure was striking in that it wasn't one forced by the strains of diminishing roles or an eventual fading of studio interest. She was still young, still in demand, and still capable of commanding attention. Still, following her final major performance in 1994's Princess Caribou, she just walked away quietly. Save for the 2001 film The Anniversary Party, which came through a favor to her close friend Jennifer Jason Leigh. Her retreat into private life coincided with her marrying Kevin Kline and the birth of their children, shifting her priorities. Though connected to the industry through the one in her life, she no longer had any will to want to be in the spotlight. Unlike actors who reinvent themselves in public, she retreated almost fully. Of course, the rare red carpet appearances beside Kline were notable only because they were so infrequent. For many years, she built a quiet, fulfilling life until she opened her New York boutique, Blue Tree, in 2005. Once, a colleague said that Phoebe made a choice few beautiful actresses have ever dared to make. She walked away before Hollywood could diminish her. For fans, she remains frozen in time, forever the luminous fantasy figure of one's youth. So important it is, if she hadn't stepped away when she was still adored, she could have become less of a celebrity than a memory of culture. Number 7. Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci was the reluctant legend who walked away at the height of his powers. Few actors have burned more memorably on screen than he did, delivering explosive performances in Goodfellas, Casino, Raging Bull, and even the comedic chaos of Home Alone. His intensity, unpredictability, and ability to flip from menace into humor in a heartbeat made him one of the most distinctive talents in the cinema. Yet he never really embraced fame. He entered Hollywood later in life, having worked as a musician and in restaurants, and never saw stardom as integral to his identity. After years of acclaimed performances and an Oscar win, he gradually retreated in the early 2000s, taking fewer and fewer films, until he seemed to retire altogether after 2000 SAXS, The Good Shepherd. Friends say he simply didn't enjoy acting anymore. He had achieved everything he wanted. The physical and emotional demands of his intense style became less appealing with age. Without statements or farewells, he vanished into a quiet life in New Jersey, with music, golf, and friendships. Then, in 2019, came Martin Scorsese to coax him back for The Irishman. His performance, so understated, so chillingly calm, was a revelation, a proof that he had always been capable of subtle brilliance if the industry had preferred casting him as human dynamite. And after that, he returned, again, to retirement, accepting only those roles worth breaking his silence. A former co-star said that Joe had discovered something very few actors ever realize. There is dignity, clarity, and even joy in walking away. Number 8. Renee Zellweger. Renee Zellweger was the star who disappeared and then came back. In the early 2000s, she was omnipresent, an Oscar winner for Cold Mountain, the adored face of the Bridget Jones films, and one of Hollywood's most recognizable leading ladies. Then, without apparent warning, she vanished for 6 whole years. It was such a complete disappearance that it kicked off endless speculation. The remarkable thing about her disappearance was the timing. She stepped away not during a career lull, but right on the heels of another Oscar nomination. When she disappeared after her 2010 film My Own Love Song, she didn't just stop acting, she stopped appearing in public almost altogether. No events, no magazine covers, no interviews. She extracted herself from the machine. When she re-emerged in 2016 at a Hollywood event, the conversation turned nastily to her appearance, a reminder of the pressures that doubtless drove her to retreat. She explained later that she had reached a point of exhaustion, moving from project to project without time to rest or reconnect with herself. Her comeback was extraordinary. Her 2019 performance as Judy Garland in the film Judy won her another Oscar and revealed an emotional depth that felt strengthened, not diminished, by her time away. Yet even after this triumph, she has remained selective and private, choosing when to engage with Hollywood rather than letting the industry dictate her life. Her journey reflects a rare kind of wisdom, the understanding that stepping back does not mean losing everything, and that boundaries are crucial to survival in an industry built on intrusion. Number 9. Michael Douglas. Michael Douglas represents Hollywood royalty's quiet exit. For 50 years, he was the embodiment of success in every corner of the industry. He won an Oscar as a producer, was one of the defining leading men of the 1980s and 1990s, and transitioned into acclaimed prestige work. But his retirement has been so quiet that many people haven't realized it has happened. There was no big final role, no emotional farewell, no dramatic announcement. After his last major projects around 2022, he simply stopped taking new work. In one of his rare interviews in 2025, he mentioned he had no intention of returning to acting unless something truly extraordinary came his way. Those close to him say that Michael learned something from watching his father, Kirk Douglas, work deep into old age. He didn't want to push past the point of joy or strength. He wanted to leave while he still felt pride in his abilities. His acclaimed performance in The Kominsky Method, a series delving deep into the realities of aging in Hollywood, served as a fitting closing chapter, art mirroring life, humor mixed with reflection. Though he still appears occasionally to support family or accept honors, the sightings are very few and far between. At this stage, he is focused on legacy, family, and life beyond the camera. His quiet exit symbolizes more than his retirement alone. It symbolizes the end of an entire era for Hollywood, defined by star power, artistry, and longevity.